Hey folks, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to start a new build, a takedown bowie knife. I'm really excited about this build because we're going to be using gradient Damascus technique and we're going to be doing it with feather Damascus. This is one of my favorite patterns. Let's go get started. I'll start by explaining what a gradient is. Instead of just simple alternating layers of black and silver steel, we're going to do a gradation between those colors. The graphic in the left represents our starting stack. The gradient is going to add smoothness and depth to our pattern. The concept of gradients in Damascus was pioneered by Peter Swarsbert and Mareko Malmasi. If you're interested in hearing more about gradients, check out this video in the corner where I discuss in depth with Mareko Malmasi. After reducing the gradient stack to a thin bar, I'm going to cut it up into 8 pieces, flipping every second one, and you're going to get what you see on the left. Our current billet looks like the graphic on the left. Those 4 lines are going to become the veins in our feather. Forge welding requires a lot of heat and a lot of pressure. Here we're at over 2,000 degrees and I'm using a 30-ton hydraulic press. Now I've drawn this out into a thin bar, we're going to cut it and restack it like the graphic in the corner. Here we're adding more black steel in the center and on the edges. Every time we restack, we have to forge weld those pieces together before we manipulate them too much. Now we're starting to create our actual feather. The first thing we're going to do is knock in the corners here, and then we're going to completely re-square the billet. Now I've rotated the billet 90 degrees and we're going to squish it flat. That's going to give us kind of C's on either end of our billet. We cut that billet up into 4, restacked it, and now we're forge welding that stack together. Again, I'm drawing it out into a long bar, but this time we're only going to cut it in half and restack it. I've cut and restacked the billet and it looks like the graphic in the corner. You can see we're just adding layers to our feather. Now I'm drawing this out and we're going to cut it up into 7 chunks and stack it up high. And that's what we're going to split. And that's going to give us our actual feather. I've welded up our stack and it's going in the forge. Then we're going to forge weld that together and split it down the center. And now the exciting part. Our stack looks like the graphic in the corner. We're going to drive a wedge through it, and that's going to split it, and then we're going to forge it back together, and then it'll look like a feather. I've welded the two halves together with a little extra seal on the outside to keep it from splitting. Now we're going to forge this back together. This feather billet is actually huge, so I'm taking about a third of it off in a slice, like a slice of bread. And that's what we're going to forge our knife out of. Now I'm just forging the tip of the feather together, which tends to spread apart when you split it. Now I'm using the rolling mill to turn that thick slice into something long that we can shape a blade out of. It's time to isolate the ricasso area. That's that area right before the guard starts. For that, I'm using a guillotine tool on the anvil. Pushing the steel down in the ricasso area moves that feather, which causes it to flow nicely instead of being cut off. And now we can start to shape our tang. Now we're at the anvil with a hand hammer. We need to forge this pattern to shape so that we don't cut anything off and it flows nicely. One really important aspect of a feather pattern is that it should terminate exactly at the tip of the knife. It looks really odd if it doesn't. I like my bowie knives to have a nice long clip on them, and that's what I'm forging in right now. I like my bowie knives to have a bit of a recurve in them, so that's what I'm forging here. Yep, I dropped it right on the floor. Now I'm just doing some final touches on the tang and we should be done. And note, I'm not forging in bevels. I don't want to distort the feather pattern at all. I'm just doing a profile. So here we are after the forging process. It's still pretty thick, but that's okay. It's going to go on a diet here. So now I actually want to surface grind it before I profile it. If you recall, I put some 1084 on the outside of the feather, and that prevents it from splitting, but now there's a little bit of black on the outside, so we're going to surface grind it and etch it so we can see where that black is. So we actually did pretty good. Most of that black came off. I can see a little bit here, a little bit up here, but overall not too bad. But I love the pattern. I chose to put some black in the center, and you can kind of see it here. So that's really cool. All right, let's do our final profile. Well, I'm absolutely thrilled how this one has come out. I've test etched it after doing the profile. It's going to look amazing, and it's hard for you guys to see, but I see the gradients here, and when it's etched in its final form, this is just going to look really stellar. Now I'm using a 10-inch wheel to do a hollow false edge on the top where the clip is. So I'm done the preheat treat grinding. Bevels are pretty even. I didn't quite take this to an apex, but I will after heat treat. So now we're going to get it coated in some anti-scale and get it in the oven for some normalization and grain refinement, and then do the quench. Here it is after heat, treat, and temper. Now it's time for that final grind. I've already reground the false edge. Now we're going to jump in and do the bevels. Alright, so I got the grinding all done on this one. It's you can probably see it a little bit. It has a convex edge. It's pretty fine. It's down to about 15 thousandths of an inch right now. And I went and took a diamond file and just finished up the plunge areas just to get them absolutely perfect. I'm a big fan of these diamond files because now you can shape stuff after it's been hardened. Alright, now for the laborious hand sanding. First, let's check our hardness on this blade with the hardness tester. We're shooting for 59 or 60. All right, I've done a bunch of hand sanding on this, got it up to 220. I will take it probably close to 800 before I actually fit the guard, but I do want to shift my attention at least to get the shape of the guard and start to think about where the slot's going to be. So I've kind of drawn this. I think it's going to be a little thicker than this, but generally this is the shape I'm going for. And now I'm going to be using this 3/8 by 1 inch mild steel because it's going to be hot blackened. But I need to know, I'm going to need to forge the ends here just because the rest is going to be flat and the other ones are going to be going this way. So I need to know how long it's going to be. So just a little trick is to use a piece of string. Okay, and what I've done is just kind of do this with a piece of string, and then I know where the wide part of my guard is going to be and where I need to forge. I just did these little dots, then I can transfer it onto the steel and forge it out.
I've decided to use the induction forge for this step. I always feel like a bit of a wizard using this thing. Since this is just mild steel, I do a bit of cold forging at the end just to flatten this out.
As you can see, I did a bunch of grinding and some milling on this just to get it where I need it to go. Now I'm going to do the slot. I've sanded this to 800, so I'm going to slot it on the mill, and then we'll be bending the tines to match our shape here. Yeah, sorry I didn't film most of this. It was just kind of tedium of going back and forth between mill and grinder, but that's where we're at.
I purposely make the guard slot a little tight, so I have to hammer it on and get a perfect fit.
Okay, so I managed to get the guard on and bent. Didn't bend exactly how I wanted using a torch. I ended up cold forming most of this afterwards. Still got to clean it up, but don't want to do too much of that until I get the handle profile, because then I'll know how far I need to bend this. But for now, I want to move on to the spacer and forge that out. So that's going to be just an end cut from the feather. And the pattern is on this side, so that I want it to show like this. Okay, so I've got the spacer that you saw me forge a little bit. It's just blocked out, but it is slotted. And I've got a piece of nickel on either side, which I'll do some file work on. Now it's time to turn our attention to the handle. And for this, I'm going to attempt to use some mammoth molar. I've had issues in the past with this, but I've watched a bunch of videos, and hopefully I could get this done. The first thing is drilling the hole, and for that, we're going to be using a masonry bit. It's a pretty long one. It's pretty wide. This is 5/16, even though this is only 3/16. but I'm going to be bedding the tang inside anyway, so I want it much larger because I can't just use a broach and broach this out. So I've coated this with CA glue. First thing I'm going to do is just level off the front and then get to drilling.
Drilling mammoth molar is really stressful. The white parts that you see are actually tooth enamel, which are very hard to drill through, but the gaps between them are very soft, so it drills very weird.
Okay, let's check in where we're at. So you saw me drill the handle for this. I've also bedded it with epoxy so that it's nice and tight and isn't loose, of course, because I had to drill this quite big. So now it's rock solid. And now we got to, see this is off a little bit, which is fine. So now we're going to square up this block.
And in case you were wondering, mammoth molar smells terrible when you grind it. It smells like burnt hair.
So I'm done profiling the handle. Probably some few little tweaks to do, but where I want it for now. Now I'm going to go turn my attention back to the guard and the spacer. This guy's going to have a museum fit, so it's going to be slightly proud, so I need to get these perfect where I want them, and then I'll fit the front of this up to that. So now I'm going to just work on the guard, and also I'm going to heat treat this spacer so it etches nicely, and then we can do our final grinding and remove any decarb. So you saw me heat treat, and then I tempered the spacer. I also ground it and did a bunch of work on the guard to even it up and grind it all nice and smooth. Now it's time to shape the handle. And to do that, you can see there's some black tape. This is Gorilla tape. There's 2 layers of tape around the spacer, and that's because I'm going to grind this flush with the spacer. Then when I remove the tape, it should be exactly the same thickness, proud of the spacer, and that's how I'm going to get that museum fit. You can see there's also a bunch of CA glue around here. That's to keep it from chipping. Now it's time to cut in the edges and round off the top.
Now I have a piece of mild steel that I'm forging for the pommel.
So I got the handle sanded to 400. It's looking pretty good. Got the pommel. I'm just using this as a locator because it's a 5/16 hole. So that fits pretty good. Obviously we have some grinding to do on this. But now it's time to turn our attention to an actual pommel net.
This is another end cut from our feather that I'm making cylindrical so that we can turn it in the lathe. Making pommel nuts on the lathe is probably one of my favorite things about knife making. I actually want the pommel inset in the back of the handle, so I'm using my high-speed rotary tool to dig out the back. This is another fun step. Now I'm doing silver inlay in the guard and the pommel. First we carve the channel for the silver wire to sit in. Then we dovetail the bottom of that channel so the silver will stay in it. And finally we smash some silver wire into the channel. Time to etch the blade in ferric chloride acid to reveal our pattern. And now the very last step. I'm using special hot salts to turn the guard and the pommel jet black.